2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports say that they have 3 weeks to decide whether or not to close on their Stewart-Haas racing charters. Plus, we'll break down the timeline that the court has set up to hear the second request for an injunction from the teams, and who should be Cadillac's 2026 Formula One driver lineup. I have a few names, but to me, it's pretty simple. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. If you see my arm right here, got blood drawn today. Yearly checkup. I encourage everybody to have a yearly checkup. Just go one time. Just make sure that you're all good. Who knows? Could help you, could not. Give you some peace of mind in that. Not a big needle guy. Not a big needle guy at all. Great veins. Don't like needles. So that was unfortunate. But blood drawn, everything's good on that part of it. So let's get into what we want to talk about today. 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports have said in their filing, their second request for an injunction from the courts, that they have 3 weeks to decide whether or not to close on their Stewart-Haas racing charters, and they need the court to speed up their timeline. Essentially, the teams in their latest filing said that they have those 3 weeks to decide whether or not they're going to purchase those Stewart-Haas racing charters or if they're not going to do it. Now, of course, they already announced Riley Herbst as a third driver over at 2311 Racing. You would think they would want to have that charter, but if they're going to be racing as open cars, then maybe it's not worth spending that money for something that you could very well lose, if they don't come out successful in their lawsuit, and then NASCAR takes those charters back, and now 2311 Racing has just wasted a bunch of money. Same thing with Front Row Motorsports. So the teams want this heard very, very quickly, and NASCAR, of course, was trying to push it back a little bit, and NASCAR is really not happy that the teams decided to create this, in my words, arbitrary timeline. Does this 3-week deadline actually exist? Up in the air a little bit. The 3-week thing is kind of interesting because, well, that's not the end of the year. I would assume that they're like, hey, we have to have a decision by December 31st. Okay, makes total sense to me. Calendar year to calendar year. The 3-week thing is a little curious, and I think NASCAR was even a little bit annoyed by that. Bob Hawkers tweeted out and says that NASCAR, in a filing on deadline date, states teams knew a week ago they'd refile and file an injunction motion Tuesday night was, quote, putting defendants as opposed to themselves, quote, on the clock over Thanksgiving and the holiday weekend. The court should reject this orchestrated urgency. Now, that's when I said kind of the arbitrary timeline. That's where I kind of pulled that from, because NASCAR definitely thinks that this urgency is now being orchestrated to try to speed up the timeline of this injunction hearing, as well as maybe even potentially some of the other portions of this lawsuit. So I understand why NASCAR is like, wait a second, this was never mentioned before. Now we have this 3-week deadline that you're saying that is now super urgent to get on with. The teams really wanted this deadline to be sped up. NASCAR countered with their dates, and ultimately the court decided to kind of more side with the NASCAR timeline for this. The deadlines for the second version of this, requested injunction, NASCAR has to have their response in by December 9th. Teams will reply, which will be due by noon on December 12th, and then the hearing date is to be determined. It's at the discretion of the courts, which NASCAR had said in their response to countering the 2311 FRM deadline was like, hey, whenever the court can hear it, then the court can hear it, that type of thing. But it very much seems like the teams are creating this urgency to try to get an answer sooner. It also seems that a big portion of the teams, refiling of this stems from NASCAR dropping the anti-competitive claims from the open agreement, where they can sign the open agreement and, it's released them from the clause that would have not allowed them to sue NASCAR and continue their ongoing litigation. And it really seems like Jeffrey Kessler and the 2311 FRM legal team over there is pushing to use that as an example to be like, hey, if you can take it out of the open agreement, you can take it out of the charter agreement as well, because Jeffrey Kessler in his statement says, quote, consistent with Judge Whitney's earlier ruling, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports are submitting a second preliminary injunction to the court with new evidence. My clients are also seeking this relief to strike down the release language that NASCAR removed from its open agreement, but still maintains in its charter agreements as part of its monopolistic control. I'm confident the court will act to protect my clients from NASCAR's anti-competitive conduct. So you can see that they are really honing in on that as well. Now, NASCAR gave them that release from the open agreement without being asked by the court, more of a good nature type of thing, in good faith. Now, will the courts decide with what Jeffrey Kessler is saying here that they should remove it from the charter agreement as well? I think NASCAR is going to have a better argument on their side for that than they are for the open team, right? Everybody else signed the charter. Everybody else agreed to these rules. And you play by these rules when you're over here. Whether or not that's anti-competitive is up to the court to decide. But when it comes to an open car, there's no additional monetary payout. There's no guaranteed starting spot. So it's kind of like, well, we don't actually care because for the most part, like you're an open car. You're not taking away a decent chunk of the monetary payout. And you're also not, taking away one of those guaranteed starting spots. So we'll see how all of it plays out. The teams also, though, did talk about like what happens if they don't get this request for an injunction. And Bob Hawkers tweeted out that portion of the filing. Bob has been a great follow through this, as has Matt Weaver. If you don't want to sift through all the court documents yourself and just kind of read the headlines, those are the perfect guys to follow through this. But basically, they're saying that if they don't get their request to compete as charter teams, they would like their antitrust claims to fall outside of the Stewart-Haas Racing charters, essentially so that they can close on those deals, but not have that threatened by their ongoing lawsuit. Now, I'm not sure if the court will decide to go with that or not, but it's all in the realm of possibilities here. It definitely seems like the new evidence that has come up, which has, encouraged them to refile this motion for an injunction, kind of stems a lot from the Riley Herbst signing. It also appears that the urgency to get these charter deal done with Stewart-Haas Racing, that was a part of it. It also seems like there could be sponsorships at stake here as well, and they need charters to be on the car. Like that's part of the stipulation in the contract. A lot of this filing was redacted. It was ridiculous. It was like looking at a U.S. government release document where you're like, okay, what was the point of this? You just put black bars everywhere. And that's what this was as well, but we still got some information out of it. And I understand teams wanting to redact their financial information, right? Especially when it comes to sponsorship. They don't want, Hendrick Motorsports or RFK or Penske or whoever else to know what they're selling their sponsorships for, how long, and all the things that go into that. But we now will wait around until December 9th to hear what NASCAR's response is to this. And then, hey, maybe even before Christmas, we get an answer on this injunction or not. Whatever the ruling is, if it goes in the favor of the teams or in favor of NASCAR, there will absolutely be an appeal over it. So we'll have to see how all of that plays out. Now that we know that Cadillac is headed to Formula One in 2026, and we know that that car is going to hit the track for preseason testing in 15 months, everybody on the internet, everybody in the motorsport world wants to know who will be the driver lineup for Cadillac F1 in their debut season. And for me, I think the lineup is actually pretty simple to get to. And there's a lot of names that have been thrown out there. We'll go through them first. And we're going to start off with some guys that I'm like, yeah, absolutely not. Roman Grosjean's name has been thrown out. This isn't Haas. What are we even talking about here? No, absolutely not. Sorry, Roman. Go hang out in the IndyCar paddock. Go do some sports car stuff. The time for Formula One just isn't here. It worked out well when he went over to Haas, but I think the time has passed him by at this point, at least to, get on to the Formula One side of things. We've seen it. We don't need to see it again. That type of situation. Mick Schumacher's name has been thrown out. No, not even going to entertain that. Felipe Drugovich, his name has been thrown out as well. 2022 Formula 2 champion, really fast driver, really good kid. Just has not got that break yet, right? He's the Aston Martin reserve driver. He is, like I said, incredibly quick, and I think that he could absolutely be a formidable Formula One driver. I just don't think this is the break that he's going to need, and I hope he gets that break someday. It just feels like he's kind of always going to be destined to be that reserve role in Formula One, which is highly unfortunate because I think the kid is immensely talented. He's more talented than a lot of people on the current grid as it stands. Another name people love to throw out is Logan Sargent. And I'm here to tell all of the F1 girlies that, sorry, Logie is just not fit for Formula One. He's just not. I mean, at no point in his Formula One career did he ever beat his teammate when both of those drivers finished the race. The only time he ever beat Alex Albon is if Alex Albon retired, and he just doesn't have a place in Formula One. We've been there, we've seen it. All right, let's move him on to sports cars or whatever else he wants to do, because he's just not a Formula One talent. He's not even as talented as Colton Herta. I mean, Alex Palou just absolutely embarrasses him, and Logan Sargent is just there. So, nope, Logan off to the side. Alex Palou, his name has been thrown out multiple times. Listen, 3-time IndyCar champion, 12-time race winner, 37 podiums, 14 poles, something along those lines. The guy is incredibly talented. Alex Palou is a Formula One driver. He's just not in Formula One. He's more naturally gifted than 2/3 of the Formula One grid right now. He's a guy that can get into the right car and score points immediately. No question about it. He is a machine. He's an absolute animal on the racetrack. He's so smooth with it. It's incredible what Alex Palou can do in IndyCar. And I think there's no question that he could absolutely replicate that in Formula One. He does have an out in his Ganassi contract that would allow him to go to Formula One. I think the biggest problem here is I don't think that Cadillac wants to come into Formula One with 2 rookie drivers, which takes me to my next driver, that being Colton Herta. Of course, everybody wants to talk about Colton Herta, the next American phenom. He's going to be the guy to get to Formula One and be competitive as an American. He's been the guy that Andretti has continually touted as the person he wants to take to Formula One, and I think he can get it done. He currently sits at 32 super license points. He's going to need to finish 4th or better in the IndyCar season standings in 2025. Now, of course, that means that his season, 3 years ago where he scored 1 point is going to fall off. I know some people would be like, well, he can finish 5th if he just needs 8 points. Technically, he needs 9. So finishing 4th or better is what he needs to do. Or he could also run some free practice 1 sessions and then, gain a super license point each time he does that as well. But the guy is, again, very, very talented. 99 career IndyCar starts, 9 wins, 14 poles, incredibly talented. Absolutely put Colton Herta into a race car. He got a lot better over the second half of the IndyCar season. This year, he is absolutely accident prone and prone to making mistakes on his end. But I think Colton Herta in Formula One with Cadillac it's a no-brainer. It has to happen if he has the super license points, and I hope he does because the kid, like I said, is very talented, and I have no questions that he could absolutely go in there and hold his own, assuming that car is up to par and everything that goes along with that. But Colton Herta should absolutely be one of the drivers that is on that 2026 lineup. All right, so if Colton Herta is going to come into the team, that means that they need a veteran, right? And I think Valtteri Bottas is the perfect driver to do just that. He's a 10-time Formula One race winner, 67-time podium finisher, 20-time pole sitter. He helped Mercedes win 5 Constructors' Championships. The guy is an absolute machine, and he's had a bad run of it, right, over at Sauber. They've been absolutely atrocious this year. Give him 2025 off. Let him go ride his bike, do some gravel races, hang out with his girlfriend, do whatever Valtteri wants to do, lay butt naked in a creek. I don't really care what he does. Bring him back in 2026. Let him be that veteran presence. Let him have that team sort of be built around him, and let him give you guys the guidance, the guys being Cadillac and girls, the guidance that you need to develop this Formula One car, car that they've never built before. Obviously, they're building it currently, but they've never had to develop it. And I think Valtteri can absolutely do that. He can mentor Colton Herta like he's Joe Tanto, and it would be absolutely incredible. So I think that should be the driver lineup: Valtteri Bottas, Colton Herta. Bottas isn't going to be around forever, right? He's looking at maybe 2, maybe 3 years at that point. And then when that team's up and running, then they can bring somebody else in to partner Colton or whoever else they want to have in that team. But I think that is a very formidable lineup, and I'm interested to hear what other people think about it or who they would put in there as well. So let me know what you think about the 2311 FRM drama, which is seemingly never ending, as well as who would you pick for your Cadillac lineup. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.